Guys, I have a serious question. Who made Encanto? Because I'm genuinely starting to doubt that it was Walt Disney Animation Studios. With that one excellent exception, they cannot stop missing with all the feature films they released in the past 5 years. And I really want to dispel the myth that I hate Disney's creative works on principle. I gave that damn Once Upon a Studio short a 9 out of 10. That was last month. And I gave Encanto a 9 out of 10 2 years ago. You can't say I'm biased against creative Disney. I just think they're stuck in an abysmal creative rut right now. And shock shock, surprise surprise, Wish is yet another indication that they're just digging the hole deeper for themselves. I liked it better than Ralph Breaks the Internet and Raya. It didn't infuriate me or anything, but it's just so nothing. It's the most nothing movie they've released in a long time. Well, okay, I guess Strange World was also kind of nothing, but this one is frustrating because it had so many elements in place that should have made it something. A classic musical fairy tale with an actual honest-to-God villain again. No more overly complex plots or generational trauma. Just a simple story reminiscent of the Disney classics. So why does this film ring so hollow? Wish is a movie all too eager to stick to the very rigid definition of what a Disney film is, while never daring to do anything better or more memorable than any other Disney film that exists. Like, okay, let's talk about the villain first and foremost, since that was the main thing I and a lot of other people were excited about going in. I will say, King Magnifico is the best part of the movie, by far. They do let him be just gleefully evil, and you can tell Chris Pine is having a ball just hamming it up in the recording booth. I definitely got some enjoyment out of this character, but like, not nearly enough for him to stand alongside the likes of Ursula, Scar, and Jafar, you know? And I think that's because they didn't really commit to a solid motivation for his character. Initially, he claims that he doesn't grant people's wishes because they might be dangerous and threaten peace in Rosas. So you can kinda see where he's coming from, but also you can tell he's kinda bullshitting and he just wants to keep his power. Okay, they're building him up as kind of this mass manipulator. That could be pretty interesting if they flesh it out. And then they don't do that. They instead take a hard left turn with his character and just have him get possessed by this magical evil book he has. So now he's just kinda evil and crazy for the sake of it with no real motivation outside of that. That's fine, it's pretty reminiscent of Maleficent, just being a fun evil villain who isn't really that deep. But the first half of the movie clearly wanted him to be deep. He has his compelling, somewhat sinister reason to not want to grant wishes. Plus, he has a tragic past that informs what he does. The movie pretty much throws all of that in the garbage by the second half. Suddenly, he has no sympathetic traits, and he's just evil for the evils. It's like the two halves of this movie were written by completely different teams who had conflicting ideas on what his character should be. And going back to those other villains I compared him to, Ursula, Scar, and Jafar, what made them such compelling antagonists is the fact that they had goals they wanted to achieve. Ursula wanted to rule the ocean, Scar wanted to rule the Pride Lands, Jafar wanted to be Sultan. Their motivations weren't deep or complex, they all just wanted power. But the thing that made them interesting was the fact that they didn't have power at the start of the movie. So watching them lie, cheat, and manipulate the protagonists in order to get that power was really cool to see. Here, Magnifico is the king. He's already in power, so I guess his motivation is that he wants more power? Respect? It's just not very compelling because there's no progression for his character. He goes from a powerful sorcerer king to a powerful sorcerer king who uses green magic to chain everybody to the ground. Wow, how riveting. Am I forgetting to mention anything about him? Oh yeah, his villain song kinda blows. I didn't like it very much. But I'll talk about that when I talk about the rest of the music. Might as well get everything else out of the way first. Asha is the protagonist and she's not very interesting. A bunch of people have pointed out how the adorkable leading lady trope has kinda worn out its welcome in modern Disney films. And yeah, I think this is kinda the breaking point for me. Rapunzel, Anna, Moana, and Mirabel all feel like distinct enough characters from each other. But Asha just feels like a hollow imitation of these four. Like the living embodiment of that "she's so quirky, love her" image. Is my face drooping? I feel like it's drooping, please shut up. To To be fair, she's not like this throughout the entire film. Her lame jokes don't pop up nearly as much in the second half. But at this point, I think it's really time for a new type of Disney protagonist. You all know how much I hate Raya in The Last Dragon, but the fact that Raya was this jaded asshole who didn't trust anybody was honestly kind of refreshing. At least it was different, you know? And now I've officially talked about every character worth mentioning. No, seriously. Asha and Magnifico are the only characters with anything significant to discuss about them. The friends are super forgettable. It's kind of cute that they're based on the 7 dwarfs, but the fact that there's 7 of them means that none of them really get much personality except for the short, sassy guy. The queen isn't very interesting. Asha's mother and grandfather are pretty bland and forgettable. The townspeople of Rosas aren't particularly memorable either. I mean, think about films like Beauty and the Beast or Encanto, where so many one-off, unimportant townsfolk made such a stronger impression than most of the major characters in this movie. The bookstore owner, the lady with all the babies who needed 6 eggs, the lady whose fish died, the guy who grew a gut. These background characters made so much more of an impression on me than Gabo and Bazima. I had to look up both of those names, by the way. There's a betrayal at one point in the movie, and all I could think was, wow, this would be such an impactful moment if I knew anything about this character at all. The star is pretty cute, even though it is literally just a Luma, and even though they were gonna do it in 2D, which would have looked amazing, but oh no, that's too hard for the studio that made an entire short blending hundreds of 2D and 3D animated characters together. Sure. And then there's the goat. I fucking hate this thing. It added nothing to the movie whatsoever. It was never funny. It was never plot relevant. It's just, oh, we gotta have the talking animal sidekick so the kids can laugh at his terrible jokes. My butt found it. Fuck you. Speaking of talking animals, this movie's depiction of magic is so boring. It really feels like the extent of this movie's imagination when it comes to the magical things this wishing star can do is make animals and trees talk and make things grow. That's the best you got? Really? Have people transform, have all sorts of crazy things happen. The villain doesn't even get to do any cool creative sorcery. I kept thinking about Aladdin and all the wild shit Jafar did during the climax. Like, that was a real sorcerer battle. Whereas what we get in this movie is closer to the live action version of Aladdin. It feels like the complete lack of creativity and ambition from the live action remakes has finally seeped its way into the main studio. Disappointing. Speaking of which, let's turn our attention to what is, in my opinion, the single most disappointing element of Wish. It's music. This might just be one of the worst Disney soundtracks I've ever heard. Pretty much all of the songs are trying less to be like musical theater and more so trying to emulate top 40 hits. There's way too much of an emphasis on this bland poppy sound that absolutely does not mesh with the traditional Disney story they're trying to tell. And there's a very good reason for that. Instead of hiring someone with an actual background in musical theater writing, like Robert and Kristen Anderson Lopez, who wrote the Frozen songs, or Lin-Manuel Miranda, who, like him or not, wrote some bops for Moana and Encanto. Instead of them, Wish's songs were penned by Julia Michaels and Benjamin Rice. Now, Mr. Rice's previous credits are producing the Lady Gaga Hold My Hand music video and being the song recording engineer on A Star Is Born. Okay? But Julia Michaels has had a much more prolific career, writing songs for Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, Fifth Harmony, Shawn Mendes, Britney Spears, Justin Bieber, Haley Steinfeld, and Gwen Stefani. So she writes pop music. Yeah, this is starting to make a lot more sense now. I don't really want to blame these two songwriters for how the music turned out, because clearly they're very talented, but they were also absolutely the wrong fit for this soundtrack. I'm just so baffled by the decision to make your 100th anniversary film the one that you don't hire musical theater writers for. Like, are you trying to tank your film? Because big musical theater numbers are what Disney is known for. You can't just expect to plug in the writer of Justin Bieber songs and expect everything to turn out fine. Case in point, it didn't. There wasn't a single song that I enjoyed all the way through. The opening song makes really obnoxious use of slant rhyme, like glow and powerful do not rhyme. 18 and ceremony do not rhyme. Stop trying to gaslight me into thinking they do, movie. But also, it just kind of felt like the great value version of the Family Madrigal song. Speaking of which, the I Want song also felt like a great value version of Disney I Want songs. It just didn't feel as organic as How Far I'll Go or Waiting on a Miracle. It just felt like, oh, it's time for the I Want song because this is a Disney movie. We gotta have that. But on top of that, the song is also indicative of a recurring theme throughout the entire soundtrack. It sounds like the poor man's Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, they're trying to imitate his style of tight wordplay and slang, but it just feels forced and doesn't flow as naturally as it does in his songs. It's hard to really describe what I mean because I don't have a background in music theory or anything, but it's just how I feel when listening to it. The song is just trying too hard to make the lyrics twisty and have internal rhymes, whereas it flows more naturally in, say, Maui's rap part in You're Welcome, or Mirabel's prima donna part of the Family Madrigal. And Lin's I Want songs didn't rely on his signature twisty lyrics. They were slower and simpler to make the emotions really hit. I do at least like the chorus of this song, though my girlfriend constantly points out what a nonsensical lyric "I'll throw caution to every warning sign" is, and yeah, I have to agree. The phrase is throw caution to the wind, like you're letting the wind blow away your caution because you're doing something daring. But throwing caution to a warning sign implies that you're being cautious when you see the warning sign. The exact opposite of the original phrase. Why couldn't they have just gotten Lin to write these songs? I mean, what was he doing this year? Okay, never mind. I think we lost Lin. Damn. Oh yeah, here are some other musical sins this movie committed that my girlfriend didn't like. I agree with all of them being bad, so I thought it was worth sharing this here. Anyway, the duet between Asha and Magnifico sounds like a top 40 song. The Singing Animals song sounds like Baby's first rap, and it wouldn't have been out of place in Cocomelon. Knowing what I know now is okay, but doesn't really progress musically enough to be super compelling. And last but not least, we've got our first honest-to-God Disney villain song since Shiny. This is obviously a pretty big deal. Or it would be if the song wasn't mid. Like, it's catchy, I'll give it that. But that's pretty much all it is. It's way too upbeat, and again, poppy, to really have the impact it should. And villain songs can be upbeat. For instance, Yzma's cut song, Snuff Out the Light, is really energetic. But it also has vivid, sinister lyrics that suit the character very well. Meanwhile, the lyrics of This Is the Thanks I Get are, I'm always here when you need to vent, and peep the name, I'm magnificent, and are you sure you're not the prob?
Here, please hit me as hard as you can.
Look, modern Disney has always loved its anachronistic lyrics, like when Anna uses the word totally, for instance, but it's not something they overused. Until this movie, and especially this song. This is not the sort of shit this character should be singing. And on top of that, the chorus just repeats the song's title 4 times in a row. Like, you couldn't have thought of other things for him to sing during that chorus? What a ripoff. When I heard we were getting a new villain song in this movie, I was beyond excited. And when I heard the title, This Is the Thanks I Get, I was pretty satisfied. Like, that sounds like it'll be a rich and juicy villain song. But now that I've heard the final product, it really stings to say that I'm just not a fan. And that applies to the entire movie, really. There's more I could discuss, like the endless barrage of references to other better Disney movies you could be watching instead, or the really half-assed art style that I'm not gonna harp on too much since I guess some people like it, but it was not my cup of tea. Oh, and how did King Magnifico not realize Asha awoke the wishing star when he literally explained to her that he doesn't grant people's wishes and she was clearly disappointed in him? Is he stupid? But rather than going into all that, I just want to leave you with one final point about this movie. Wish is one of the first Disney films in ages that doesn't feel like a family movie and instead feels like a children's movie. From the stupid Cocomelon animal musical number, to the big chicken performance, to the entire character of the talking goat, to the fact that this movie lacks any real theme or significant message. Like, say what you will about the other recent Disney movies, I certainly have, but whether they were good or bad, they had things to say. Encanto and Strange World were about generational trauma, Raya was about trust, Frozen 2 was about sins of the father and trying to do the next right right thing. Ralph Breaks the Internet was about accepting that your friends have other goals in life. Not all these films executed their themes in the best way, but at least they had themes that adults could latch onto and identify with. I don't think Wish is about anything, really. It's a simplistic fairy tale meant to keep your kids distracted without offering any real depth or nuance. It does absolutely nothing that you can't get out of other, better Disney films, and as a result, I see no real reason to recommend it. If it had a single great song, then maybe, but it honestly doesn't. It's a pretty pathetic attempt at a 100th anniversary celebration, and I will forget everything that happened in it tomorrow. 4 out of 10. Shout out to Elemental for being the better animated film released under the Disney umbrella this year. I guess that's another point for the Comeback Kid.